Hello and welcome to NJBIZ Conversations. I'm your host, Jeff Kanige. My guest today is Sandra Fava. She is the founder of Fava Law, which is a family law practice in Morristown. Sandra, welcome.
Thanks. Happy to be here.
Oh, well, thanks for taking the time. I really appreciate it. I'm interested in hearing about how you came to start your own firm. As I understand it, you were a partner at Fox Rothschild, which is a big firm, and I've heard you say good things about it. I saw an interview you did a few years ago while you were still a partner there. You seemed it seems like a decent place, but you decided to head out on your own. And I'm curious about what led to that decision. What drove you to decide? What convinced you that you should go out and start your own firm?
Sure. Yeah, I'm happy to answer that. Like with most decisions, it wasn't just one specific thing. I think there were a couple of things over the course of time that eventually dawned on me and kind of pushed me in the direction of deciding to do this. Um, Again, like you said, I've been at Fox and in Big Law for the majority of my 20-year practice, which I've exclusively devoted to family law. If you notice, if you look around at larger law firms in New Jersey and in other states, not many of them have family law practices, right?
Right.
We focus on individual clients who are generally going through what is one of the most difficult times in their lives. And in doing so, they have to navigate the emotional and the legal aspect of this very large transition. Uh, Larger law firms generally tend to larger clients, specifically people in business and in the industry. And so rate structures are, focused towards
Okay.
those types of clients. And as Fox continued to grow, over the duration of time that I was affiliated with the firm, rates certainly grew as well. The market changes. And I felt really we were at a point where the rates were not making sense for individual clients. And,
Okay.
while I continue to practice and specialize in, sort of high net worth and high conflict divorce situations. And when I say high net worth, I don't mean people just who have a lot of money, but people who have not your run of the mill compensation structures, right? People who maybe own a small business or people
Okay.
who have a job that their compensation is structured in multiple different ways, whether that's restricted stock or long-term incentives and things of that nature. And those people, while they may have, funds, and you look at their bank and balance sheet and think, these people qualify as wealthy, they not necessarily don't want to be paying, you know, overly high hourly rates for
Okay.
legal services. So
Okay.
what really prompted me to begin my own firm was the ability to provide the same high level quality legal services to clients, but at a rate structure that I felt was reasonable, both for, the value that I can bring to the table and that my team can bring, and for the client that is, getting those services. Another thing is just that as the firm got bigger, it became a lot more corporate structured. And so again, because we are not representing corporate clients, we're representing individuals, their vision of what our services should look like did not really match with my vision of what I wanted to be able to provide to the families that I work with. And, finally, I think that while the world is changing, and certainly we are in a place of a large question mark with what is happening in uh, politically and socially with regards to DEI and
Certainly.
other sorts of programs that have really helped particularly women and people of color advance in certain situations. I feel that my experience was that law firms certainly have that goal to do that, but they need to move a bit quicker in getting the steps in place. And so I had to assess the value that I feel that I bring as a person, but as a lawyer and as a partner. And if those were not being rewarded similarly to my male counterparts, then it was really a time for me to make a change.
Okay. All right. Well, there's a lot there to unpack. I'll start with this. I actually was mildly surprised when I saw that Fox Rothschild had a family law practice. It's as you say, it doesn't seem to fit with sort of a Wall Street big law kind of practice. So the question I was going to ask you is, was it a problem? Did you see a problem with the legal business as a whole, or with big law firms in general? It sounds like it was mainly just big law firms that that really bring the sort of compensation structure and the fee structure that you're talking about. Is that right?
Yeah, I would agree with that. That is definitely was my experience.
Okay.
And part of that too is, after the pandemic, all industries changed and for sort of attracting talent, younger attorneys, what was expected of them. We had a difficult time bringing on new talent. People were really looking for hybrid or remote work, and
Okay.
some of that can work depending on levels of experience, but it's not a one size fit all approach. And I think as larger firms um, manage themselves, there is an expectation that there is a one size fits all approach.
Okay, and certainly, I mean, I've heard anecdotal stories about an exodus from big law firms, particularly from New York into New Jersey, for all of the reasons that you just cited.
Mhm.
The other question I was going to ask was, is it a question of management? Like if a big law firm had a different sort of management structure or a different kind of managers, would they be more along the lines of the kinds of things you were talking about, or is it just the nature of a giant law firm that really sort of brings that out?
I think it's the structure of the management for sure, because I know of other people, other attorneys who have been at different larger firms and who have done some, I will call it maybe out of the box type of things, and they've had much more pleasant experiences. So I think that it can happen. I just think there has to be a willingness to make those changes.
Okay. And what I was also going to ask you, what you thought you could do better outside of a big firm. It sounds like it was basically serving the same kind of clients, but in a more economically, in a way that makes more economic sense. I don't want to put words in your mouth, but that's what I heard you say. Is that, if I got it, the sort
Yeah.
of sum and substance?
Absolutely. And what one of my concerns was being able to attract the same type of talent that we had at certain points when I was with Fox
Okay.
Rothschild. And surprisingly, that was not at all an issue. I had, as soon as I had posted about an opportunity to work here, I was flooded with great resumes. I had several candidates. It was really interesting. I think younger lawyers, while they may want some sort of flexibility and the things that they value may not necessarily be the same as what my generation or your generation values in types of job settings, um, they wanted clearly they wanted mentorship.
Okay.
They want somebody who can be available to them to really help them understand and have a human side to them. And so, you know, I think you could ask anybody here. We seem to have a really cohesive group, um, enjoy working together, get things done effectively, and for me personally, that's super rewarding. I had always kind of done the mentoring at any firm that I had been at. So that was not even a question for me in transitioning to going out on my own. But coming into a place where people were happy to be here is really a nice part of this.
Okay, well, that sounds like another piece of anecdotal evidence about lawyers moving to a place where they can do the kind of work that you're doing at a different kind of in a different kind of setting.
Yeah.
Again, I don't want to put words in your mouth. Is that essentially were those the kinds of resumes you were seeing that coming through the door?
Yes, yeah, absolutely.
Okay. So how did it go? What were the biggest challenges? What was the big surprises when you got out there? Did it go the way you thought it would, or was it harder, easier? What was your experience in getting the law firm up and running?
So I think it was easier than I had expected. I
Oh,
had a
okay.
lot of trepidation and nervousness about doing all of this. So there was, before anything actually got started, just in the planning phase, there was a lot of sleepless nights. Luckily, I had colleagues who had done this before me, obviously, that I was able to tap into, who gave me some great advice and resources. And so
Okay.
once I put everything into place, there were some bumps, of course. Somebody asked me recently to describe like the first 2 months, and I would say that I vacillated between extreme happiness and, crying and wondering what I had done.
Okay.
But now that that has passed and we're on our, I think, seventh month, things are running really smoothly. I mean, you're always looking to improve and make changes, but nothing that I wouldn't be doing otherwise in my life. And certainly, I feel much more satisfied in my professional career and happier in my work life.
Okay. Well, so I guess the question, are you comfortable with what you've done? Well, no, let me start with this because you just said something that I wanted to get them on. Where did you seek out any help in terms of setting this up? Because what I hear you saying is that what I hear from a lot of folks who start their own businesses, that you know, you vacillate between total panic and happiness that you've accomplished something
Yeah.
on your own. Were there any resources that you turned to? Was there anybody that helped you sort of get through that initial or at least the planning stages and trying to get yourself established?
Yes, definitely. I did not do this on my own. So as I mentioned, I had some colleagues who are also family law practitioners who had done, what I done, left a firm and started their own shops, let's say, and they gave me some resources. Through my years of just, networking, I've got a tremendous network of people. So as I started to mention this to certain people, the outpouring of wanting to help was really something that surprised me, and I'm so grateful for. People who I've met through women's empowerment organizations, people who I've met through NJBIA,
Hmm.
the state bar organization, and a lot also from my husband. My husband was really my biggest cheerleader when I thought, this was crazy. He really kind of grounded me and told me that I was basically already doing it and now I would do it on my own. And to this day, in fact, yesterday we were having a conversation about growth and whatnot. So he's really been very helpful.
Okay, very good. So then I'll ask you what it sounds like you're happy with the decision. You have no second thoughts. This is what you're going to be doing for the
Yes,
foreseeable future.
yes. And
Absolutely.
my
Okay.
goal is to maybe grow a bit.
Okay.
There are certainly complementary legal services that I think I would like to add to the practice. So we'll see. I'm looking into that, always open to a new opportunity like that. But yeah, I'm very happy.
Okay. So what would you say, going back again to the structure of the legal business as a whole and big law firms and law firms in general, what would you say to a big law firm, someone who runs one of those kinds of firms? What would you say to them about what they could do better, what they could do to keep people like you from moving, or is there really nothing that they can do? If you're looking for the kind of experience that you have now, you're just going to have to make the same kind of leap you did, or is there something that some advice you would give to folks who run those kinds of firms?
Sure. With the money that big law firms spend on all sorts of initiatives and research and things like that, branding and marketing, I honestly think that if they're interested in keeping talent, whether that's from leaving the firm to go to another firm or doing something that I did, I think that a resource or is somebody who can step in and evaluate each of the attorneys because it's natural that over time people develop relationships and not necessarily an intended bias, but an unintended bias is created by those sorts of relationships and just who they are and their own experiences coming up in as an attorney in the practice of law. So I think that having somebody to come in to say, okay, here we're looking at this practice area, looking at these partners, looking at these junior partners, looking at the associates, what is their value? What are they doing? And really assessing things from somebody who's got a fresh perspective instead of trying to always internally do things. I
Okay.
think that that would truly help retain talent in a bigger firm setting, especially if you're a firm that wants to have personal service practices,
Okay.
because those people are not necessarily so brand or name focused. One of the things that always worried me about leaving was that I was leaving a big firm and I had kind of reached the top. These are the things that in law school they teach you to become a partner at a large firm, and here
Right.
you are. And is it a failure in a sense to leave that, right? That inner thought process. But what I learned is that people weren't hiring me because I was at a Fox Rothschild or my other firm that I was at for a brief stint, Riker Danzig. They were hiring me for me and the
Hmm.
type of person I am and the type of legal services and the kind of relationship we were going to have as the attorney client. Um, and I think that that's really important for larger firms who want personal services to recognize that they're not coming for the name. Maybe a company will do that, but certainly not an individual, I don't think.
Well, certainly, and law is a business that sort of depends on relationships. So
Yes.
it sort of leads into the next question that I was going to ask you, which is, what would you tell someone in your position, particularly a woman who wanted to step out of that kind of role and do the same kind of thing you did? Would you advise them to do it? Is now a good time? Or are there is there any sort of advice, any direction, any guidance you might give someone who, and maybe it's already happened. Maybe someone's come
Yeah.
to you and said, I'm what you've done is fantastic. I'd like to follow and do the same something similar. What would you tell that person?
So again, it would depend on that person's circumstances, right? I think we have to be realistic as individuals, attorneys, if we're thinking about creating or doing something like I've done,
Hmm.
sitting down and being realistic about what kind of income you need, what kind of book of business you have, meaning clients that are going to come with you, how you
Yeah.
generate new clients, what that expense is to you. Do you work at a place where they fund your marketing, or are you self-funded? I was largely self-funded for the ventures that I wanted to do. Um, what you think your time balance, I guess, is, do you
Okay.
have the time to sit down and dedicate to this? And then, going forward, are you somebody who's going to want to grow? Do you want to bring on somebody? Do you normally work with somebody else, or are you somebody who runs things on your own? I think you have to take all of those into consideration. I knew how my practice was structured for at least the last decade. And so I was really confident in that set of information to say, okay, I could do this. It was really fear that held me back, the fear of failure, which is,
Okay.
I think everyone has.
Yes. Yes, indeed. Okay. And finally, before I let you go, I'm curious as to what you're thinking of next. I usually ask people in your position, where's growth going to come from? You mentioned ancillary services. Have you started to think about, what the next, say, year, 2, even 5 years might look like at your firm now?
Yes, yeah, absolutely. So it's not ready yet for announcement, but I have an announcement coming up soon about
Oh, come
growth.
on, just between you and me, tell me what.
But I'm very, very excited about it and very honored by the opportunity that was presented to me. And one of the other things I'm looking to grow is to bring on somebody who does trust and estates
Oh,
work.
okay.
It's a really natural complement to family
Sure.
law.
Hmm.
Obviously, as things change, people need to plan. It's also, I take the position or the practice position that if I'm going to do some sort of like premarital agreement, prenuptial agreement, I like to be able to bounce ideas off of a trust and estate attorney from the estate planning perspective.
Okay.
So, there's a lot of complements in those two practices that I think would be great to have somebody on the team.
Okay. So you are thinking about the future. This is
Yeah,
it really this is what you're going to do.
this is what I'm going to do.
Okay. Well, we will leave it there. Sandra Fava, founder of Fava Law, thanks for joining me. I really appreciate you taking the time, and I hope you come back and share that big announcement with us at some point.
I would love to. Thanks, Jeff.
All right. And thank you for watching. Until next time, stay safe, everyone.